Hi, this is the second part of the lecture for section 1.1 on functions. So this is the second video in the series of 3. For this objective, we're going to find the value of a function. Let's review some terminology first. The input is your x value. The output is f of x. So this is read as f of x, or the value of f at the number x. This is also the same thing as your y value. Okay, so y equals f of x. Those two things are the same. Here's an equation, 2x minus 5. If I find f of 2, that means to plug in 2 for my x value, or replace x with 2, and then work it out. So here I'll replace this x with this 2. So 2 times 2, that's 4, minus 5 gives me negative 1. So this gives me, for this equation, for this function, the ordered pair 2. That was my input, and my output, once I worked everything out, was negative 1. So that would be an ordered pair that falls on the graph of 2x minus 5, or that is part of that function. So you can think of a function as a function machine. You may have seen this like in middle school or high school. The input is your x value. You put it in, something happens, and then math is done, and you have your output, your y value. So this is kind of that measure of predictability. So if I have a function and I plug in, let's say, the same number over and over, if I plug in 2, every single time I plug in that 2, I'm going to get out the same exact answer. So a function is predictable. It's not a mystery what you're going to get when you plug in the same thing over and over. Okay, so to find values of a function, all we're doing is replacing x with whatever's in the parentheses. So here, if I'm trying to find f of 3, that says in this function, everywhere I see x, I'm going to replace it with 3 and then work it out. Okay, so for part A, to find f of 3 in that original given function, I'm going to replace this x with 3. And use parentheses as you do this, making sure you follow order of operations. So here, when I go to work this out, I'll do this squaring before I multiply, following order of operations. Okay, so 3 squared, that gives me 9 times negative 3, that's negative 27, plus 6, so negative 21 is our answer. So this is the y value that corresponds to the x value of 3, or in other words, the value of the function at x equals 3 is negative 21. All right, part B here, f of x plus f of 3. F of x just means the original function with the x's. And then f of 3 is what I just found in part A. So f of x here is just the original function, still with the x's in there. And then f of 3 I just found in part A was negative 21. So I could do plus a negative 21 or just minus 21. So here, this answer still has x's in it. And that's okay, because I never replaced x right here. All right, part C, f of negative x. This says everywhere you see x in the function, you're going to replace it with negative x. Okay, so again, watch your parentheses here. Okay, so negative x squared, that's negative x times negative x gives you positive x squared. So that's negative 3 times positive x squared. And then this will just be minus 2x. Okay, so the only thing different is that sign from the original. So again, this says replace x with negative x. Okay, part D, this is different. The negative sign here is out in the front. Negative f of x. So this really means, if I take it apart, -1 times the original function f of x. Okay, so I'm going to do -1 times, parentheses, the original function f of x. I'm actually not replacing my x with anything here. Okay, -1 times the original function f of x. So now I'll just distribute that -1. So this will be -1 times -3x squared, so positive 3x squared. -1 times 2x gives me -2x. So this is the final negative f of x. Okay, so notice the difference in our answers from part C and part D. They do turn out to be different. So part C, again, we're replacing x with -x. Part D, you're multiplying the entire function by -1. Okay, just to have more space, I'm going to go to the next slide to do parts E and F. All right, part E says f of x plus 3. So this says everywhere I see x, I'm going to replace it with x plus 3. So this is x plus 3 quantity squared instead of x. X plus 3. Again, you can see here the parentheses are important because I'm going to end up distributing here. Okay, so to work this out, x plus 3 quantity squared, remember that's FOIL. You can go off to the side and do that. Hopefully you remember that from algebra. And you get x squared plus 3x, so plus 6x plus 9 for that part. And then I'll go ahead and distribute here. So this is plus 2x plus 6. And I still have another step. I need to distribute that -3. So -3x squared minus 18x minus 27 plus 2x plus 6. And then taking it a little further, let's go ahead and combine like terms. So -3x squared stays, but then I can put these together. -18x plus 2x, so that's -16x. And then -27 plus 6, -21. So here's the final. So again, in this one, you're replacing x with x plus 3. Watch your parentheses. And here, multiply out the binomial. Okay, again, I need more room, so I'm going to go to the next slide for part F. All right, this one is leaning towards calculus a little bit here, difference quotient. So I have a couple of different things to do. First, f of x plus h, then minus the original function, f of x, and then over h. Okay, so h here is just going to be a constant. We'll leave that in there. Okay, so first, let me do f of x plus h. Okay, so that says replace x with x plus h. Okay. And I will go ahead and actually multiply all of this out. So multiply out the binomial. Thinking I'm going to need more space over here. So that'll be x squared plus hx, so plus 2hx plus h squared. And then I'll distribute the 2, so plus 2x plus 2h. And none of that's really going to be like terms, but we'll keep going. So -3x squared minus 6hx minus 3h squared plus 2x plus 2h. So this is all the first part, f of x plus h. Then I'm going to subtract from that the original function and divide by h. So let's see if I can do all that at one time here. Here's f of x plus h, what I just wrote. I'm going to subtract from that the original function. So let me use parentheses here. The original function is this. All over h. We're running out of room already. Okay, so now I do need to try to put things together a little bit. I'm going to distribute this negative sign. Now, because I'm running out of room, let me just try to do some of this in my head here. So negative times negative, this is a positive 3x squared. So I'm going to have negative 3x squared here and positive 3x squared here, so those are going to cancel. Distribute this negative to the 2x, so that will become minus 2x. So I have positive 2x minus 2x. So those will cancel as well. So what is left? Negative 6hx minus 3h squared plus 2h all over h. You can see that all of these have a factor of h in them. I am going to factor that out and then cancel it with the h in the denominator. So let me go ahead and factor out an h in the numerator. That'll leave me negative 6x, that's coming from this term, minus 3h from here, plus 2, because the h is pulled out now, all over that h in the denominator. Then these will cancel, h over h, and this is what's left, negative 6x minus 3h plus 2, and h is not equal to 0. Okay, so again, this is getting us ready for some of the calculations in calculus. All right, for the next part, we're finding values just using your calculator. It's hard for me to show you this with the technology I have, but just go ahead and take a second and try to plug each of these in on your calculator. So f of 1.234, that says replace x with 1.234. So here I'm going to plug in 1.234 and square it. So go ahead and try that on your calculator. Again, here replacing x with 1.234, so that's 1 divided by 1.234. Just make sure you can type it in. And same thing here, find your square root button, so square root of 1.234. And just as a reminder, you do need a scientific calculator for this class, not a graphing calculator. So even if you've been using a graphing calculator, go ahead and find that smaller scientific calculator and try these, because sometimes pressing the buttons happens in a different order on different calculators. Okay, so try all these out and I'll pull up the answers for you. This is what you should get. You may have slightly more rounding depending on your calculator. Feel free to pause if you need to. Okay, just some other definitions here. The implicit form of a function. Most of the time what you're used to seeing probably is the explicit form. The explicit form just means that it is solved for y. So y equals, or f of x equals something with x's in it on the right hand side. Y equals negative 3x plus 5. That's usually what you're used to if you think about like the equation of the line, y equals mx plus b. The implicit form simply just means that it is not solved for y. So you may have to rearrange things before you can make sense out of it. All right, that's it for the second objective. Go ahead and go to the next video for the rest of the notes for section 1.1.